Good. Did you get my feedback?
No, I couldn't see the comments, but I tried right now. But
In the Word document?
No.
Okay. Did you check in Canvas?
Yes, I took the grade, but
there should be an attachment. And
no.
No? No. Do you have access now to?
I think so, yes.
I hope, because I'm sending out attachments. I hope everybody's getting the attachment. If not, I can send you the email, or I can send you the document to your email account. But let's see. Where are you, Ceci? Here on February 2nd. Is it there? No. Or in grades? Because, let's see. Problem is, I don't know what you guys see exactly. So in the literature review. Okay, now this is what I see. I don't know exactly what you see, but here, like, I sent this attachment to you, but I don't know where you see it. If you go into grades, maybe do you see like the rubric, and then I have a note, all individual grades. I have this note to you, and there's an attachment here. I'm even going to say do.
So it's in grades?
Yeah, check in grades or even assignments. Not sure what it looks like. Cursos y grupos. Thesis Seminar. Oh, no sé si dice. Grades. Literature review. Ahí. Ahí está. Now, the way that I'm grading the literature reviews is that each of you are receiving a grade for each of the products. So you'll be receiving a grade for your literature review, your method section, and so on, each one. And so the feedback that I'm giving, I'm expecting everyone to make those changes for the first draft for May 23rd. Mm-hmm. So the grade that you receive for each of the individual products, I will modify. When I look at the final draft for me, the first draft on May 23rd, I'm going to see if you made those changes, and I will adjust your grade accordingly, not only for the first draft, but I'll go back and modify each of the grades if you've improved the first draft. Okay, so don't be too concerned about the grade for each of the products. Just try to make those changes and for the first draft, and then I'll adjust the grade accordingly. If you have questions about my feedback, if you're not sure, we can certainly talk about those. But you have basically until the 23rd of May to make them. I wouldn't wait till the last minute, however, and I would try to make those changes while it's still fresh in your mind and you're working with it now. That way you can focus on other areas of your research.
Okay.
All right, so take a look at the feedback in the Word document. I think the easiest thing would be to either print it out or open it up and go back to your Google Drive and make the changes. I would probably do it that way. But all of the comments that I leave in there, if you do have questions about it, either ask me in Canvas or we can talk about it in our tutoring sessions.
Okay. Well, are you using the well the list? It was like I don't know, remember the name. It was a list about
Yeah,
code,
the error
code.
correct. Yeah, yes, I'm using that
Okay.
that list. Yes, in most cases. Sometimes I just leave comments, but
Yes,
most of the time I'm using the abbreviations. So. Now, Ceci, we need to. Do you have any other questions about the literature review at this point?
Well, I need to check
Yeah,
the
take a
comments
look
again.
at.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's take a look at your research questions, because now we need to begin thinking about your design, your instrument design. We're in week 6, and we're going to have basically 4 weeks to design our instruments. Okay. So we need to look now very closely at our research questions and decide on how we're going to design our instruments to answer our research questions. So you have here, this research has the purpose of finding out how teachers use captions on films in order to help students practice listening comprehension. How do teachers use listening strategies along with use of videos to promote listening? So what instruments are you thinking about using for these, to answer these research questions?
Well, maybe an observation sheet for the teachers and a questionnaire for students.
All right, so
In fact, I have some questions that could be useful for those instruments. For example, for the observation sheet, I have some question. For example, how many often do you use authentic videos in your classes? What type of authentic videos do you use? Maybe films, songs, tutorials, etc. Why do you use videos?
okay. All right, let's take one at a time, and let's start first by thinking about the observation. Now you're going to need to find teachers who are using video, right, to promote listening comprehension. So my first question is, do you have an idea about who you might observe? Someone who you think
Not yet.
is okay. So I think you're going to need to come up with a questionnaire and apply a questionnaire to various teachers to help you find the teacher or teachers that you can observe. Okay. It can be teachers from the same school. It can be teachers from various schools. Depends on if you know, your own availability, if you want to focus on one school or if you want to focus on various schools. But you need to try to find teachers that obviously are going to give you the information that you need to answer your research questions. So I think we ought to think about applying a questionnaire before to help you choose the teachers and ask questions about, like you're mentioning here, how do you use video, when do you use it, why do you use it, and then based on those results from all those questionnaires, you choose, okay, I'm going to focus on these 2 teachers because they told me this.
Okay.
Right? You need a reason or rationale for choosing those teachers, and this will help you provide that information. The examiners might ask you, why did you choose these teachers? Right? And you're going to actually mention that in your presentation. You're going to say, I chose these 2 teachers because based on some results from the questionnaire.
Okay.
All right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So the first thing is to really choose first, like if you want to focus on like one school, are you interested in like elementary school or university level or?
Maybe here in the university.
Okay.
I was thinking of.
All right. So for example, extension courses, or I don't know, language extranjeras.
Well, I think it will depend on, well, the use of this kind of material.
Right.
So, as you mentioned, I need to also find some teachers that use videos.
So right, so you know, you have two options. I mean, one is a questionnaire, or another is just an interview, quick interview. But you have to think about the time, because this shouldn't take a lot of time. I mean, I don't want you to spend a lot of time on this, because this is just like the first step. This is just the filtering process for you to choose to really even begin doing your research. So this can't take a long time. It should be something that should be a very short questionnaire, something that doesn't take the teachers long to fill out, but that at the same time gives you this information about how they use it, why they use it, how often, which is another thing. How often do you use it?
What level?
If they just, and what could be one, yeah, what levels, and each teacher you're gonna have to write down what level, right? So you need to know which level that they teach. But you might have questions like, do you plan on using video in the future, in the near future, for listening comprehension? And it's not just video use; it's video use for listening comprehension. See, todo junto. Porque they may say, "Oh, I use video all the time," but it's for something else.
So should I write? Do you use authentic videos for listening comprehension, or just?
Yeah, you could say how do you use it,
Okay.
or and how often. And if they say, "Well, I never use it," well, then they don't use it. So you don't really need a. Do you use it? You could just say, how do you use it, and how often, and then explain. So they explain a little bit. So most of your questions are going to be open questions. In fact, all of them probably will be open questions. Well, depends on how many questionnaires. If you apply 10, 15, or 20 questionnaires, probably open questions would be enough. You can very quickly skim through. But if you apply, I mean, here at the university we have like 80 teachers. So if you apply like 50 or 40 or even 30, it could be a lot. It could take a long time. So think about what type of questions you want to ask, and how many questionnaires you're going to need. Like I said, do you want to just focus on one section, extension courses or language, or do you also want to include the BA to see if anybody uses question? And if you think of teachers that you think use them, or that you have had a class where they've used it, give them the questionnaire, obviously. But you need to have something formally to analyze to be able to justify which teachers. So it's not enough that, oh, this is my teacher, I think my teacher uses video, so I'm going to choose this teacher. You need to have evidence of them actually saying, I use it in this case.
So it's like a como un filtro.
Así
I mean,
es.
it could be the first questionnaire, then I choose a teacher.
Exactly. It's exactly like it's like a filter, right? And you're not going to use the data from all these teachers from the questionnaire. You're only going to use the data from the questionnaire for those teachers that you end up choosing to participate in your study. So you may only have 2 teachers that you choose. You can use the data from the the questionnaires only for those 2 teachers. We're not going to use the rest of the data. Okay. But it's necessary so that you are, fairly certain that the teachers that you choose are going to give you the information to answer your research questions. One of the questions might be, are you willing to participate in the study? Do you have time to have 2 interviews for like 15, 20 minutes? And if they say yes, no problem, okay, now you know. If they say, no, I really don't have time, I don't want to be in that, well then that's good information to know, so you don't waste your time.
That's true.
Yeah.
So also it could be part of my, how do you say, for example, the last semester we used, no me acuerdo, como el triángulo ese.
Okay, see, we need to triangulate the information. Yes, and so this would be one type of information.
Yes.
All right. So that's the questionnaire. Now we also, so let's write down here questionnaire. So the questionnaire at the beginning, observation.
Mm-hmm.
So we may need an observation sheet. Observation sheets. Okay, so this will be our second data source. Okay, this will be our second data source. And the observation sheet will be now focusing on those 2 teachers or 3 teachers only that are part of your study. And you may need to observe maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe. It depends on how many days that they use video to promote listening. Here's the thing, you're going to be you need to work very closely with the teachers and ask them beforehand. When do you plan on using video for listening comprehension for the next 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Whenever we finish with all of your design and you begin collecting your data, you need to work with each teacher and plan your next 3 or 4 weeks as best you can. And ask the teacher, when will be the next day that you plan on using the video? Okay, next Thursday. Okay, so you go next Thursday. You don't need to go every day because you don't know. There's no point. But you may need to go, I don't know, 2 days in a row. For example, if they say, well, I'm going to need 2 days to do this activity with video and listening comprehension, then you may need to go 2 days in a row or whatever. But you need to work this out beforehand with each teacher, so that you know that with the days that you're going to be there, they're likely to use it. Now, they may say, well, I hope to use it tomorrow once you come by. It could happen that you go and they don't use it. It may be until the next day.
Yes.
But that's a risk. That's a chance you have to take. But then, you go the next day and you observe, hopefully. So try your best to plan as much as possible. Work closely with the teacher. But know that you may need to be flexible in making sure that you're there whatever day that they are going to apply or use video. So the observation sheet, you're going to be basically looking at, let's see, how teachers use captions. So you're specifically talking about captions. So all of these questions that we're talking about in the questionnaire is about captions. Now, if it's very common at this point in the research, whenever we start talking about instruments, and we look at our research questions, it's common sometimes to have to adapt the research questions because we're very concretely looking at how we're going to collect the data. If it looks like few teachers are going to be using captions, or maybe they just use videos in general for listening comprehension, we might have to modify our research questions to not mention specifically captions, but to broaden it to videos in general. Okay, so if it looks like we're going to have problems, now if you find a lot of teachers that use captions, then that's fine, great. Okay, but we have to be, we have to kind of adapt here, and if it looks, whatever's practical, whatever you can actually do, right? Because if you can't find teachers to do it, then.
So it would depend on the first question.
Right. Okay, so we're going to have an observation sheet. Do you have any ideas for your observation sheets that you're...
Yes, well, just like a few. Mm-hmm. Maybe if they use the caption in Spanish or in English, maybe how long? Maybe how is the procedure of using the authentic videos? The time it takes to plan and to inside the class.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Well, I have a few ideas about.
Okay. One way to do it, and this is kind of a general approach that works for a lot of different ways to observe, is, and I've been talking about this with some of the other students, is to come up with an observation sheet with header information. So you're going to have information about the class, the teacher, the time, the place. And then below that, come up with what I've written down here is time, activity, and description. And so you're basically observing and taking one class and breaking it down into chunks. And you basically are writing a start time and an ending time per activity. So for example, at the beginning of the class, the teacher may call roll. When the teacher starts to call roll, 802, 805, you write down call roll, and that's basically it. After the teacher calls roll, then the teacher begins talking about does another activity. You have a different start time, and you give this activity some sort of name, some sort of classification. It can be based on the syllabus. It can be based on, maybe it's a video warm up or something. But you write down a description, and then you describe what you see. And here you're just writing. So what does the teacher say? What does the teacher do? What did the students say? What did the students do? And you're just writing. And you're not analyzing, but you're just simply writing down what you see. The teacher said this, then the student said this, and then this. And we observe some students are sleeping in class or da da da. I see, you're just writing. And when that chunk of that activity finishes, then you start with the next one. Time, activity, description. Y sigues así, pero no tan así, escribiendo. But you're not analyzing. You're simply providing as much detail about what you see so that later, when you read this, you can remember what you saw. That's the only purpose of this. So you don't want to analyze. You don't want to see, notice how they're using the video or analyze anything at this point. You're just recalling.
But it's only for the context of the class, or?
Yeah, it's basically just an observation. What did you see?
Okay.
And what do you observe? It's not what the teacher feels, because you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how the students feel. You don't know how the teacher is planning. This is just your class, your observation, and this is one way, along with the recording. If you can have also either a video or audio recording. With the recording and what you see here together, it will help you analyze then later the information. So analyze comes later. The data collection, we're just collecting the data. Right? So in this case, when you're in the class, don't mix analyzing and observing. Okay, observe first, and then you can analyze the next day. You can look at it when you're at home and you look at the information, you're listening. Okay, and you can analyze. That's fine. But don't do it at the moment that you're in the class observing. So this is one way too. And if you have another format, that's fine. But you want to try to, bring me something next week that you think you feel comfortable using, but that helps you recall everything. Now, you might have I've seen some observation sheets that indicate like teacher movement,
yes,
like notations where first the teacher was here, then the teacher was here. That might be another, something that you might also do. But this way you'll be able to recognize when the video was being used and how, in the sense that maybe it was connected to a speaking activity that came later, or something like that. So also, I'm not sure if the teachers are using syllabus. The syllabus might be another type of data source that you can use. It just depends. If they write in the syllabus video to do listening comprehension for the purposes of whatever. Okay, I think it's worth looking at the syllabus to see what is in the syllabus.
Or could be also in the questionnaire, or should I?
You might ask a question. Do you plan? Do you write in your lesson plan? Video use or materials. Is that part of the syllabus? Do you have to include it in the syllabus? Yeah, and then based on that, then you can determine whether or not you need to analyze the syllabus or not.
Okay.
So we have observation sheets, we have questionnaires, and you're probably going to have interviews, right? You're going to interview the teacher? See? So you're probably going to need an interview guide. Okay, so you'll do kind of a semi-structured interview. So you'll have maybe a list of questions that will help you when you're in the moment that you're interviewing. Have a list of questions or key ideas that help you remind yourself of what to ask. Okay, so
Yes.
you might also have interview guide. Now, you're not going to want to list all of the questions that you're going to ask, but only the key questions, because you want to keep it as conversational as possible. So you might begin with just very general questions where the teacher's just talking about the class. How do you think the class went today? Blah, 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 blah. They may even bring up video, or you say, well, I noticed that you use video in your listening class. How did it go? Did it go the way that you planned? And I see. So try to keep it as conversational as possible, but listen very closely about what they tell you, and then think, okay, now I'm going to ask this question based on what they told me. Ask these questions. So with that, we have 3 different types of data sources, and we're triangulating in this fashion here for the purposes of your study. Next week, bring in a questionnaire that we can look at to see if it works.
Okay.
Bring in an observation sheet and an interview guide that you think will help you answer your questions. Remember that the data sources and the way in which we apply these and design our research, our instruments, will be directly related to our research questions. How do we answer our research questions? So always go back to your research questions and ask yourself that if these designs are such that they will help you answer your research questions.
Okay, so write it down because
Okay.
I forgot everything.
And also these are being recorded too, so you
Yes.
can also go back and check those recordings.
So, observation. And
So we have 4 weeks. If you bring in something and we finish, if you finish with your design early, then you can begin, as soon as you finish, we can begin with the data collection. So we don't have to wait 4 weeks. I'm going to go at your pace. When you have your information, let's begin right away with the data collection. And if you do it here at the university, you shouldn't need any special permission. But if you go to another school, we also make sure that if you need permission, that you start that process right now. If you think that you're going to go to another school that you know requires permission, we need to start that right now. You need to ask for permission to do that, because sometimes that takes time. It'll sit on somebody's desk, to sign for a couple weeks, and it's going to hurt. It's going to influence how much time you have. So, okay. So, any questions, doubts?
No.
No? So I'll see you then next week, and we'll look at your instruments and take it from there. However close we are, then we'll continue. And again, try to think about maybe as soon as you finish, beginning with your data collection, so that you're sure that you have enough time to collect the data.
Okay.
All right.
So, thank you so much.
All right. You're welcome. We'll see you next week.
See you.
All right. Take care.
Then, see you. Bye.
Bye.